in lockdown, and now back again in the lockdown. We thought we'd do another episode. We've done a few episodes, of course, since we started this podcast. And the reason behind this podcast was to give advice, real advice, to real estate agents in New Zealand and around the world, so they can real advice that makes real difference. And with the conversation that we have with people we bring to the podcast, or people who have been actually done their time, if you will, in the real estate arena. For example, some of the best agents we've interviewed, some of the best operators, and we've had some of some other business people that have been involved in business. And today, it's with my pleasure to bring to you Marcus Shaw, who is psychologist come used to work as a marketing manager for one of the big brands or one of the big companies, which you guys had over $1 million worth of marketing that you were doing, Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
And today he is one of the coaches in business mastery, and obviously I work pretty closely with him myself personally. Do you want to add anything else to this, Marcus?
No, I mean, other than that, the thing I always forget is that I'm a father of 3, husband of 1.
Yeah.
I live here in Christchurch, and really pleased to call it home. And currently looking, as you said, in lockdown. Hey, I think James has entered the room. Do we let him in?
I think we're just going to be watching. He's
just watching.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Currently sitting here in my bedroom at home. We've moved the desk down here, and looking out onto the Port Hills, and enjoying what are we now? Day 3 of lockdown.
Absolutely. Well, the reason I thought it would be nice to have a conversation with you is I call this podcast "Cracking the Code to Growth," because growth is what this thing called progress is the secret to happiness. If you're here and you're planning to go there, and you got a plan and obviously a goal to get there, then and you get it heading towards us, then that's what makes individual happy. And the best way to get to a place from where you are is obviously having good mentors is important. And then one of the things that I've done all my life, and some of the most successful people that I know have got as coach, they're business coaches, and coaches all around in the other aspect of their life as well. Tell me more about this coaching. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Look, I think there's a saying, when you're inside the jam jar, you can't see the label. And many years ago, when I was at high school, we did a biomechanics project on our swimming stroke. And I thought I was a pretty good swimmer at the time. I grew up on the east side of Christchurch. I was at the beach, every other day in summer, and I thought I was a pretty good swimmer. And so we headed down to Kiwi 2 at the time, and we swam across the diving pool with some cameras on us. And what I discovered when I looked back at the camera was that, and the footage of my swimming stroke, was that I was nowhere near as good as I thought I was. And life is a little bit like that. We see the world through our own lens, and we see things in a particular way. Our brain uses these neural pathways that are well worn, that have been used multiple times, and so we have a way of operating in the world that seems right to us, but it's not until we involve somebody else in that discussion, in that conversation, and involve somebody else in our thought processes, that then we can actually isolate the areas where we're not making the best quality decisions that we could be. So yeah, my own personal experiences with coaches have definitely shaped my I guess my value of that of having other people around me. I grew up the oldest of four kids, so I was used to making decisions on my own, reasonably responsible, and so I think I applied that to all of my life. But yeah, in recent times, having had a coach, multiple coaches myself, now I would never go back. I would never not have a coach again, because for that exact reason is that we can't see our own blind spots. We don't see ourselves how we actually are. We just see ourselves as we think we are.
Yeah. Having heroes and mentors is certainly important, but having somebody that works with you like week to week basis, day to day basis, is just invaluable in my opinion. Obviously, having you in my business working alongside me, having somebody that I work with when I go to the gym, in all those people kind of gives you idea of where you're at, and then what do you need to do from today to tomorrow to next week to next month, to get to the next level. That's why professional athletes got coaches.
100%. Yeah, and when you're, if you head down to the gym yourself and you're working out, maybe you're a super motivated person and you go hard and you feel like I'm not here to muck around, I'm going to go hard. When someone else starts looking over your shoulder and watching your technique, watching your form, watching your energy, watching your your last rep, or what you thought might have been your last rep, and they're like, "Hey, do another one."
Yeah, 100%. Because I work hard when I go to the gym. I don't like not sweating in the gym.
Sure.
But when I've got Jade there, it's like I can't walk when I'm done, kind of thing, and that's exactly what we need. That's exactly what we need.
So look, let's be straight up. You can get amazing results without a coach, without people around you having input into you. You can get great results. There's plenty of shredded dudes out there that that don't have a coach.
Yeah.
But are you going to be at a world-class level without coaches around you? Could you imagine an Olympic athlete? We've just finished the Olympics. Could you imagine one of those athletes not having coaches around them? It's crazy.
Yeah.
All of them have a multitude of coaches around them. And if there is some, I'm happy to be corrected on this, but if there is someone who doesn't have a coach or a team of coaches, they're probably the exception, not the rule.
Sure.
So, yeah. It's a no-brainer to me. I think the challenge, though, is that we live in a country where of DIYers. Culturally, it's almost viewed as a sign of weakness for a lot of people. So I think that is something that we battle. We battle here more so than other countries that are maybe less independent.
Yeah. The reality is, like you said, we can do okay without a coach. But if you want to be world class, you certainly need somebody to say, "Hey, this what you're doing is not helping you get to where you want to get to, because we think we're doing amazing work. We think we're working hard, but it's not actually somebody's actually keeping us accountable from day to day to week to week." Until we're going all in.
And I think, look, in business, it's a lonely game, because there's conversations that you don't want to necessarily have with other people on your team. There's many a conversation that I've had with with business owners where they'll go, nobody else knows this.
Mm-hmm.
I've never told anyone else this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be a lonely place. It's a place where isolation is a big threat. And when you make decisions in isolation, they're not going to be good quality decisions. You need diversity of thought. You need someone, and that's the role of a coach. Oftentimes, is to provide, or in the business context, it's to provide a different angle that you're not seeing. Or to help you see the angle that you are taking and the angles that you're ignoring.
Mm-hmm. It's obviously we know that being coach, having a coach working alongside you is very important. Now, tell me, what would be for a business? What would you point out? What would be a thing that a business need to look at to get to the next level from where they are?
Yeah, so my approach is a little bit different with this. So, if you imagine a Formula One car, the car's got, there's two things at play. There's the actual machine itself, so the tires, the chassis, the engine, the materials on the body. There's the aerodynamics. There's a whole bunch of things in terms of the machine itself, and that's like the business. Yeah, that's the economic engine that sits behind what we do. And so we can we can make improvements to that economic engine of our business. We can put our prices up. We can add, upsells, cross sells. We can increase the frequency which our customers are transacting with us. We can try and improve our productivity. There's a whole bunch of things we can do in terms of the engine, but there's also a whole bunch of things that we can do with the person who's driving that machine. So the Formula One car has a driver and then a machine. So my approach is that the biggest impact you can have is in a business is firstly with the driver, with the person. If you've got a horrible driver at the wheels of a high-powered machine, you're destined for chaos. And so my approach is always look for the changes that the extra horsepower we can get out of the person first, and then the machine. But in saying that, there's a whole bunch of things right off the bat that every business should be looking at, and those are the 4 areas of mastery that we teach in our system. So, it's a 2-part question, I guess, or 2-part answer. So, in terms of the business, I think, those 4 areas of mastery, which you can build a business without having these 4 areas in place, but if you do, at some point you'll have to revisit them. You're going to build a pretty shaky business or something that doesn't really have a secure foundation. So the 4 areas of mastery are your own time as the business owner. Do you have a default diary in place? Are you working on your business for a minimum of 10% of your week if you're the owner? Do you have a vision for the business? Are you clear on the mission and the values of what you're doing, where you're going? Do your customers know that? Do your team know that? Delivery mastery. So, are you delivering your product or service consistently? Is it like McDonald's, where anywhere I go in the world, I'm going to get the same level of service? Or is it up, down, good day one day, bad day the next? Yeah. And then money mastery. So do you have a simple financial dashboard for your business? You're measuring the 5 ways numbers, your leads, conversion rate, average dollar sale, average number of transactions, and your margin. And there are usually a couple of other key numbers specific to your industry as well. So those are the foundational things that we always start off with, and 99.99% of businesses will have work to do in one of those 4 areas. Yeah, before we start talking about social media marketing, or whether you should be using TikTok or not, get the foundation right.
Yeah. It's and this applies also to, because our audience is obviously real estate agents predominantly.
Yep.
And real estate agents, every real estate agent is self-employed, so they've got their own, we call them EBU, effective business unit. Or there might be some business owners who actually own real estate business or social media businesses or whatever businesses they have, and those two things are real important. Let's talk about the psychology and mechanics between those two. We've spoken about it a few times, and I just love talking about it.
Yeah, so like we kind of just talked about the mechanics of the engine, the business engine, in those 4 areas of mastery. But behind all of that, behind the vision for the business, for example, behind the systems that you are operating, behind the finance, as a person, that you can't take people out of the business as much as we try to. There's that saying, it's just business, it's not personal. I think that's absolute rubbish, because it's impossible. The cycle of business is it starts with the owner. The owner's job is to support the team and give them everything they need. The team's job is to support the customers, and if the customers are happy, the business is doing well. So owner, team, customers, people. So the reason that I say a lot of the big wins we can get in terms of your business actually start with you as the owner is your own understanding of how you think, your own psychology, so the owner's own psychology. And then once you understand and you become aware of the way you're thinking, then you can start to extend and expand that understanding of the way people around you are thinking. And if you understand fundamentally, if we boil it down to this, if I understand how I work and how people work broadly, am I or am I not going to do better in business?
You sure will.
100% you're going to do better in business, because if you think of commerce, it's just people transacting. It's 2 people exchanging goods or services for a currency.
Yeah.
So if it's just an exchange between 2 people, then it would be it's a no-brainer that that understanding how people think is gonna benefit you. So that would be the starting point for me around understanding the importance of psychology in business.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've had coaches in the past, Marcus, and obviously me and just started working about 6-7 months ago. The reality is, I'm not saying this because to do any promotion for you, because you don't need that. But
too kind.
But what I'm saying is, is these difference between coach and coach. You can go to a coach who has never done what you're trying to do, then it's you getting somebody teaching you something that they've never done is different than going to somebody who has done their time, who's done their research, who has got a little bit of psychology, in my opinion, behind what goes in human mind too. Now, I think you bring this mixture of psychology and business together. Let's talk into that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, sure. And it's a great point. I think, and I wrote an article on this the other day around like the difference between a coach and a mentor and a consultant. So, you know, all of those things, all of those roles, those functions are helpful to have in your business. So, um, as you rightly point out, well, if I'm going to learn, how to build a real estate business from scratch, well, there's some mentors that you could have, that you could engage with, that have done that before, that have learned some things along the way, which would be helpful for you to pick up and glean from, right? And so a mentor in that sense is super helpful. There's going to be some times where you get stuck in your business and you need a consultant, a specialist, an expert to come in and do something for you. You don't want to be coached on it or mentored on how to do it. You just need something done, and you want a consultant to do it for you. And then there's going to be other times where you need a coach alongside you to help you become more aware of your thinking, and to guide you and help you connect your own yourself with the resources around you, and increase that internal sense of control. So all of those things are important, and I certainly wouldn't discount the need for any of those things. But to come back to the question around blending psychology and business, I mean, where to start with that? So I mean, I guess, look, personally, so what I found was, in my own journey, is I started off my my learning journey at University of Canterbury, and I started working on a commerce degree, and the only reason I ended up studying psychology was that I majored in management and in marketing, and I just became curious more than anything about psychology, and I thought it was going to be I thought I was going to learn some of the dark arts, how to read someone's mind, and work out how to influence people. And it was not at all like that. My psych degree was, and anyone will know this who's done psych, but it's pretty dry. One thing that I did learn in it, though, was critical thinking, and the importance of evidence-based practice, and that wasn't present in the commerce world. I think, and I think now, having worked for a number of years now in a few different roles, I've certainly and a few different organizations with which got very different results. Great companies. I've been fortunate to work for some great companies, but the results that each of those companies got were very different, and my experience of working with and for some of those companies was very different, based on the way that on the culture that those companies created. So I think, to me, the owner's the owner's own personal psychology is the critical piece of the puzzle.
I think when I started, when me and you started initially, had a conversation. We were it was more of, because these the mechanics and the psychology. It was, I've been to coaches who has had, like, the mechanic is pretty simple. Like, now you can just jump on YouTube, you can learn about business, right?
100%.
It's pretty readily available. What I liked about when I had a conversation with you was with Marcus, was like about the psychology of, like, what goes in your mind, Nathan, what's the business about, and how we can get this business where it is to a whole new level. And I think that's what I really enjoy. And I think people will benefit from having a chat with you if they are thinking about having somebody, if they're thinking about getting to the goal, if you will. The problem in our industry that we have is people teaching real estate agents who either never sold real estate before or sold 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? And the reality is, if you haven't done it, how can you teach somebody how to do it?
Yep, very good point. And as you said, we are in the information age, and so, if, as you said, if you want to learn how to do anything, like tune anything on your business, to do with the mechanics of the economic engine, you can find it, and to a large extent, you can find a lot of that same resource in terms of your influencing your thinking and your behavior. Information is not the problem. That is one thing we cannot. We can never blame a lack of information. It's what is the problem is the action part. Taking action on that information, making sense of that information for your particular situation, your particular context, and that is much more nuanced. I can read an article on being present and practicing gratitude, but whether I do that or not is a totally different conversation. What's stopping me from being present and practicing gratitude on a daily basis is a whole nother conversation.
How does a coach help us do that?
So the starting point for coaching is that, or I should say, my starting point is, you have everything, you, the client, have everything you need in order to get the answers that you, so you either already have the answer or you have the resources to find the answer. Does that make sense? So
elaborate on that if you will.
Sure. So when I'm having a conversation with you, the consultant just gives you the answer. He says, Nathan, go do this. But as a coach, I want you to find your own answer. So there's times in a coaching conversation where I know the answer, but or I know that I could just say something. But when I do that, I rob you of the discovery of your own answer. So when you find something yourself, it's like this chemical explosion in your brain. It's like, whoa, it feels awesome. And you're like, I want to do that again. But when I just tell you something, there's oftentimes a bit of resistance around that. There's a bit of skepticism around that. You want to reinterpret it in your own language. So what I'm trying to do is, and when I'm working with a client, is help them find their own answers with the resources they already have at their disposal.
And if I find my own answer, yes, Sydney does. It's beautiful. If I find my own answer, then what do I do?
Well, if you find your own answer, you're way more likely to go do it, right?
Yeah.
Because you've told yourself it's not. It's like when you're a kid and your mum's like, go do this, go do that. You should go to school. You should, get a. My dad used to say, get a job and get a real job and a haircut. That's probably what his dad said to him back in the 70s. But and you're like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
You're like, I'll do it when I want to do it. I'm going to do what I want to do. Yeah. So when you discover, like, no, this is what I want to do. This is the path that I can take. And this is the challenge, and I found the solution myself. Then you're way more likely to jump into action.
Absolutely. So the initial conversation, if I was going to come and call you, right? Me and you have an initial conversation. How do you draw up a map of where I want to go? I'm curious. I'm just want you to
Sure.
go back to if somebody's going to call you today and start working with you. How does it look like to you?
Yeah, so it's a real simple conversation, really. The starting point is exactly as you said. Where do you want to go? Because it's not about the journey is not about where I want to go. It's about the coaching relationship is about you and where you want to go. So the starting point is, as Stephen Covey said, you start with the end in mind. So what's the dream? And oftentimes in business, we get a little bit distracted by that. We get a little bit, distracted by the now and the present. And the dream oftentimes is buried way back in the back of our heads. It's been lost or left behind, or it's murky. It's not as clear as it could be. So that's a starting point. Is like, why are you in business? Why are you operating this business today? It's presumably to serve some need for yourself, some desire for yourself. And yeah, obviously it benefits other people, but predominantly it exists for you. So understanding the drivers behind that, and then we talk through where you're at now, what's happening right now, where the challenges are, where you're being slowed, where there's resistance or roadblocks, and then we just talk through a really simple plan about what we can do right away to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And as I mentioned to you, we've got some tools that we use with businesses and some really simple frameworks that we use to help navigate the journey and make it a little more simple. And as you've experienced, they give you some sense of orientation on as to where you are on the journey, and some confidence in that, in the economic side of the business, and then without going into too much detail, that's the top level summary.
With 3 advice that you would give to any business or any agent that has got the desire to do better, what would be 3 advice, 3 things that they can do today to and hopefully keep on doing it to make their business better?
Yeah. So the first one would be, I'm trying to think of a succinct way to put this, but work on your self-awareness.
Okay, please elaborate on that.
So what I mean by that is there's a bunch of tools that you can use. There's Myers-Briggs, there's DISC, there's Enneagram, there's Hogan profiles. There's a whole bunch of tools that you can use to work out the way you think and how that's similar or different from the people around you. We use a tool called AccuMatch, and it is the Formula One car equivalent of the behavioral intelligence world, or the psychometric profiling world. We don't use that word, but
a personality type you're talking about, right?
I mean, that's a whole nother conversation in itself, but I would broadly just put that under the heading of self-awareness. Okay. Being aware of your own mental map, and again, that's a whole nother conversation. But when you understand the way that you see the world, then and then that's the starting point for learning to adjust to people that see the world differently to you. So I think that's one of the biggest skills that you can develop personally, is the ability to adjust your communication to the people around you. And that starts with self-awareness. Yeah.
Sure.
The second thing I would say would be get a coach. And I'm not advocating for me. I'm advocating for the role that other people play in your own success. There's no one who gets to the top and goes, I got here by myself. I had no help from anyone else. There's nobody who says that. And if they do, they're lying.
Right.
So yeah, get a coach. And the third thing I would say, and it kind of relates to this, the point around the economic engine, and it would just be, know your numbers. Know the numbers that you have to hit in order to succeed. And there's a saying that Keith Cunningham has in his book, The Road Less Stupid, and he says what gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed gets improved. So if I'm measuring something, I'm going to start, by default, just by measuring it, I'm going to start playing around with that number. And if I'm playing around with that number or that driver, I'm going to start improving it. It's not to say the first change I make is going to improve it, but eventually that variable will get improved.
I love this, Marcus. Number one, find out who you are, self-awareness.
Yeah.
The way you see the world. Two, get a coach. Third, know your numbers. And I love this quote by Keith Cunningham: what gets measured gets managed, what gets managed gets improved. 100% true. I think I would love you to talk a little bit more about self-awareness, because I think this is the most important thing, in my opinion. Yeah. If you don't know who you are, how can you really know other people, right? It's like,
yeah. It may come as a shock to you, but not everyone sees the world the way you do. I don't know if you've ever heard one of the most obvious ways to see this is, you ever had a conversation with someone and you say the world's round and they're like, nah, it's a square. You say that you should drink tea and not coffee, and they tell you should drink 10 cups of coffee a day.
Guilty of that.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating, right? You're like, why is this person so just difficult? Yeah. But guess what? They're thinking the same thing.
You're crazy.
They're like, what is wrong with this person?
Yeah,
they think you should drink tea. My goodness, what is wrong with them? And so it's in those differences that it's those differences that make the world interesting, and the diversity of thought that makes a meeting really fun. If everyone thought the same way, the meetings are pretty boring. But in the same breath, it's also that different the diversity of thought that creates challenge at the same time. And so learning to navigate that and create situations where a group of human beings are all are moving to in the same direction with as little friction as possible, and I use that term broadly. That's a skill of a leader, I believe. That's one of the, if not the most important skill of a leader in my mind is, and think of the number of conversations you have on a daily basis with someone who, again, surprise, surprise, doesn't think like you do. Dan Pink wrote this book called To Sell is Human, and I used to think sales was evil. Not evil, but like grimy. And I worked in the automotive industry, and people used to be like, "Oh, so you're a salesman?" And I'd be like, "No, I work in marketing." Like, no, almost like a superiority complex around that. Like, builders are, builders and electricians. Sales and marketing are often like that. They both look down on one another. But Dan Pink makes this point that in the book To Sell is Human is that everyone's in sales.
Too right.
Because the kid that, my daughter's just asked me if she can use the iPad and do some drawing on the iPad. She's in sales. She's selling an idea to me.
Absolutely.
My wife's selling to me because she's like, "Hey, do you want to finish early today?" So we're constantly in these negotiations or exchanges, and so our ability to communicate with the people around us it's a fundamental human skill, and it's one that if you invest in, you're never gonna get a 0% return on that. It's going to be an exponential return on it. So,
right. So self-awareness is true. You got to know who you are before you can, people around you. And once you know people around you, that's your team, are leader, then you guys can go in the right direction and still have different kind of personality type, which is, as you said, it's good to combine everybody. Imagine having everybody like me or you in a room, right?
So maybe we pick up on that just quickly. So the reason that I avoid the types is, one of the biggest drivers for behavior is identity. So if I say if I'm an activist and I represent this particular political group, and I am then I will do things. The actions that I take will be in line with that identity. Yeah, because I'm referencing it. Yeah. I'm like, I'm this group of people. What's an example? Like, and it's hard to pick non-politically sensitive.
It's okay. You can go
right now. Let's say I'm a runner. I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy shoes that runners buy. I'm not going to buy like CrossFit shoes. I'm going to buy running shoes. I'm going to spend my money on stuff that helps me to do more of that sport, or do that sport at a higher level. I'm going to spend my money on, and my time and my energy, my effort on activities in line with that identity. Yeah. So when the danger with personality profiles is that they're broad stroke, and part of that makes them really accessible, and that's why they become popular, and part of that is actually helpful. Like, broadly speaking, it's helpful to understand, if we use DISC, for example, whether somebody's fast or slow paced, whether they're people or task focused. Those can be helpful tools. I'm not suggesting that. The danger is when you become attached to a particular color or a particular letter or a particular description of your personality, then you act in line with that thing.
Mm.
So you'll hear people say things like, I'm a high D.
Yeah.
I do things fast.
Yeah.
That's not a flexible way of thinking.
That is true. Yeah, sure. Because what your mind is malleable, it can change that, can't you?
Correct. That's nature and nurture, right? We can nurture. So you don't come out of the womb as a high D. You may have some biological markers which make you more predisposed to showing some of those traits, but you are nurtured in an environment which creates that behavior. So yeah, I would avoid that. I would encourage the opposite, which is what we like. We encourage people to be high. If you're familiar with disc, like be high disc. Be able to adjust your style based on the person that you're talking with.
Sure, and anybody can do that, right?
Anyone can do that. Yeah, doesn't matter whether you're a leader or not. But I'm assuming we're talking to leaders here.
Yeah. Well, everybody's leader. Leadership is like, you're a leader at home, you're a leader at work, you're
good point.
One of the books that I love is Leader Without a Title by Robin Sharma. An absolutely amazing book. It talks about if you're running a receptionist front desk, you're the leader that area, and if you're running a back in administration, you're a leader that area. So you've got
100%.
Everybody's a leader. I want you to tell me the best companies. What's this thing that they have in common? What's the one or two things that the best companies or businesses or EBUs have in common? EBUs, I'm talking about the real estate agents thing of effective business unit, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think for me the one core idea that I always come back to, and if you want to read more on that, I mean, there's an old classic from Good to Great by Jim Collins, and he talks about he does a 12-year study, I think it is, of the top companies on the US stock exchange, and which ones outperform the market by 3 times, and one of the things that I think, or the key parts of that model that I always come back to is best in the world at. And the reason I come back to that is, I don't think enough of us really spend enough time honing our niche to the point that we can say I am, or I could be, because we're not always. That's the nature of this discussion, is oftentimes we're not the best in the world at X, but could be the best in the world at. It's a stretch question. So it makes you think, man, what would it take to be the best in the world at? And, like Bruce Lee said, I don't fear the man who's throwing 10,000 techniques, but throwing one technique 10,000 times, right? Or I think he says kick, but 1,000 kicks, but one kick practiced 10,000 times, and that's the same in business, right? I'm not scared of someone that does everything. I'm scared of the person that can do one thing better than anyone else in the world. So I think that's, to me, that it also draws on a whole bunch of things like founder's DNA. Like, you're not going to build a company that doesn't represent you in some way. And so I think it brings into question, like, it really forces the owner to dig into who are they, what kind of a legacy do they want to leave, what do they want to be known for, who are the people around us, is this group of people around us right now going to take us to where we want to go, or do we need to make some changes? I think it raises a lot of sideline questions. Best in the world at. What could we be the best in the world at?
Sure. So a company, some of the best companies are the ones that have got this niche, and they either are, or they're trying to, or they're thriving to get to become the best in the world at one particular thing. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Pretty much any company that that fails, that at one point was doing well, there'll be some link to where things went off track and they started doing something they were never going to be the best in the world at.
Sure. Sure. What's usually that? Isn't that the owner or the founder of the company? Because in Good
Yeah.
to Great,
Sorry, carry on.
in Good to Great, it talks about humility of the founder. It wasn't about the founder. It was about what the company brought to the table, if you will, to the community.
Yeah.
In a few
Yeah, I
more.
mean, obviously that looks different based on the size of the business, right? If it's a one man band, well, um, that's totally different to if it's a global company with a board and a shareholder base, and so yeah, I think for most New Zealand, Australasian SMEs, the founder is very much an integral part of the business. So that conversation is going to have a lot to do with them.
Now, just to wrap this up, I know you're busy. Obviously, you've got other meetings and stuff, and obviously you've been sold to finish a little bit early today. Now,
Well, I didn't
before,
say I bought that.
okay, no, haven't bought that yet.
We need to work on our sales skills.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, tell me what makes a great coach. What makes a great coach? And before we go, and we'll share your details, of course. What would be?
I feel like this is becoming an advertorial for me.
I don't think it is, because the reason is, like, I know because it's been an important thing in my life, in my not just business, but also my personal life, having that somebody that helps me do, would directs me, or guides me, or where I'm heading. And if it's my fitness, if it's my nutrition, if it's my my business, it's helped me. So I would love people to do that as well, because I would like people to do well in their life, for sure. And that's what I get about.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the question again?
The question was, what are the traits of a really great coach?
Yeah. Yeah, look, the first thing I would start with is, do they have a growth mindset, to use Carol Dweck's term? Are they fixed? Are they done? Are they finished? Or are they themselves growing? Because it sounds obvious, but you don't want to be coached by someone whose growth trajectory has ended, who's reached the pinnacle or thinks they've reached the pinnacle. So that'd be the first thing. I mean, I do really believe that you need to find someone who where there's synergy. There's a connection between you and them, and I think that is important. Not every there's some amazing coaches out there in the world, and I'm privileged to know a lot of them, and they don't. Some people get great results with one person, and then other people go, man, that just didn't work. Yeah. That's okay. It's just the way humans are. So find that synergy relationship where 1 + 1 = 3. And then I think the final thing is someone who's not going to collude with you. So if you've got a coach who's just going to agree with you and just not challenge you at all, you got the wrong person. You need a great blend of invitation and challenge. If you imagine invitation on one end and challenge on the other, someone that, at times, when things have been tough, they can welcome you in with warm arms and give you a pat on the back. And then at other times, when you're slacking off, go, hey, or when you said you're going to do something and you don't, they're not afraid to have a conversation about why that didn't happen, and give you a smack on the butt. So those would be the three things I would look for.
I certainly love that, Marcus. I think, as I said, it's not an advertising thing for you or right. It's about like I think if human beings want to be happy, they need to have this progress mindset to grow. And once we have that, that's what really fulfillment is about. Like we've seen many people that got to what they wanted, perhaps, and then they just went stall and just went downwards because they got what they wanted, and now it's like, is that all it is? But when you've got a coach, or when you're working with somebody and you're progressing through to going to the next stage or next wherever else you're heading to, and somebody's actually helping you get there, it makes it easier, it makes it enjoyable, and it certainly has made a whole lot of difference. In my life, it's been challenging, as you know, business is challenging. Selling real estate is challenging.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it with somebody who you can pick up the phone, have a conversation with, it's just totally different game if it comes to sport or business or life, right?
Totally. Yeah, I agree. 100%. Yeah.
Marcus, just
it was fun chatting.
How can people get hold of you if they need to?
Yeah, they can jump on the website. So businessmastery.nz. Jump on I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, I post on that reasonably regularly. But yeah, jump on the website businessmastery.nz and flick me an email. If you're watching this and you want to have a chat, there's a link there to book a call with me and we can have a chat. But yeah, otherwise, as I said before, it doesn't matter whether it's me or someone else. Like just find someone that you gel with, that's going to challenge you and is still growing themselves, and you'll go places for sure. You'll go faster.
Life is about growth. Thank you very much, Marcus.
Thank you, Nathan. Pleasure chatting.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to get you guys out. Thanks, Marcus.
No worries.